Astronauts to the moon.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage. Mirage.
Welcome, fellow traveler, to phase 2 of the journey. The path to enlightenment begins from within and spreads outwards into the universe. As the universe is the manifestation of the essence of consciousness, no outward motion can occur without inward transformation. As such, it is up to you, the traveler, to unlock what awaits beyond the veil.
Tonight, my unconventional conventionists. Sharee didn't get the reference there. We're going to get really controversial tonight. We've got so many different topics to talk about. Jaren and Missa are a couple that are probably just as, if not more so, controversial than we are. Mm-hmm. And I love it. I really do. Because I feel like we've always been 2 steps ahead, and we start talking about certain ideas. People think we're crazy at first, and then it catches wind and spreads like wildfire. And I'm noticing that Jaren and Missa bring a lot of the same ideas to the table. Jaren and Missa being one of the first ones to talk about the flat earth. Not only that, but put together really good productions around the idea of flat earth, proving and disproving certain elements about the globe hypothesis and the flat earth hypothesis as well, and doing a great job of pioneering this field of study that really has grown to thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there. And Jaren has also taken it steps further, going into religion. One of his recent videos, this is going to scare the hell out of a lot of people out there. How dare he do this? Was talking about Crowley, Aleister Crowley, and some of his writings, which I have always been kind of fascinated with. There's some stuff that I don't agree that Crowley said. There's some stuff that Crowley didn't actually say that has been ascribed to him. I actually have a thing here, top 10 misquoted conspiracy quotes of all times. One of them being Albert Pike, for instance, that, we'll need a new world order, and there'll be 3 world wars and this and that. A lot of these quotes that people circulate, especially on Facebook and places like that, never actually happened. But as I was watching Jaren's video, he hit every point right on the head. And there is a concerted effort to keep you away from certain understandings by a group of people or energies or interdimensionals or whatever you want to call them that have sought to replicate and hijack the true essence of humanity while minimizing information and spiritual information as well that leads to your freedom. One perfect example, the word anarchy, which I've always said comes from the Greek meaning without rulers, but is put in front of us as if it's chaos, where an anarchy with no rulers is the keys to our freedom. Why would we want rulers? I don't understand. Why would anybody want rulers? People want rulers because they think that their neighbor is going to come kill them if they don't have rulers and if they don't have systems of checks and balances like that. But all in all, I think human beings in and of themselves are really good. We just have some really bad ones, and we have bad ones influenced by certain bad energies out there, whether it's physical, monetary energies, or spiritual energies. But I'm getting a little bit off point there. But Jaren and Missa have really gone into those other realms and are definitely several steps ahead. So we're going to get into all kinds of stuff. First, we're going to start out with flat earth, though. So I think we have Jaren and Missa on with us. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. How about you?
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us. Is Missa there with you?
She is.
I am.
Excellent. Hey, how you doing?
Yay.
Good.
We have everyone.
Good. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. You guys were talking about off air a quote by George Norrie. I haven't heard any of this.
Yeah, it just came out, and for those of us that don't believe in the heliocentric model, interesting news. We don't get very much interesting news in this department, but let me bring it up for you. Which is funny though, because we talk about interesting news, and then all these characters who run the place talk about this fake news. Right, that's why we need rulers, because who's going to stop us from reading fake news if it's not for them?
Of course. Oh, and don't dare look at the WikiLeaks, because media has special protection under the law, but it's illegal for you to actually go to WikiLeaks and read Hillary Clinton's emails. I heard that on CNN, and Snopes proved that to be true.
Isn't that funny? I mean, is there anything worse than CNN, CNBC, ABC, Fox, and these guys calling other people's news fake? I mean,
that's very true, but at least they tell you, CBS, they tell you you're going to CBS when you come to this station.
Uh-huh.
At least they're honest, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, this is George Norrie from last night, so hopefully it plays.
I don't believe this story, but I'm going to tell you it. Apparently, WikiLeaks documents are revealing the Apollo program was a fraud. The moon landings never happened. According to new documents scheduled to be released this week by Julian Assange, founder of WikiLeaks, they could reveal damaging information about NASA's Apollo program. Assange, who has lived at Ecuador's London embassy since June of 2012 in fear of being extradited to the United States to face espionage and conspiracy charges arising from leaking thousands of secret diplomatic and military documents, claims that he has had evidence and documents given to him by a government worker that shows that the Apollo program really never set foot on the moon. The documents are said to have been handed to the WikiLeaks founder by a retired high-ranking official of NASA that has worked within the government for more than 45 years, according to Assange. Mm-hmm. Top officials, by the way, of the Chinese space program last year accused the government of the United States of faking the moon landings after the Chinese lunar rover found no evidence, they said, of the Apollo program moon landings after investigating the same area where the Apollo 11 mission landed on July 20th, 1969.
Or didn't land.
Say it ain't so.
No.
Yeah, so that's huge news, because it's something that, I don't know, it's one of those things where I have this hatred for the scientifically minded, simply because I don't understand how you can look into the moon landings and come to the conclusion that we went.
Well, most of the scientifically minded people who believe in the moon landings have not looked into it.
Right. They simply just defer to authority and just say, no, we must have gone because great men say we did.
And isn't that completely contrary to the entire meaning of science, which is supposed to be a method that's provable and repeatable? And if you're not even willing to do an experiment or your own research on a particular subject, you can't really call yourself a scientist.
Right. I mean, and that's the whole idea behind the flat earth, because for the most part, it's a group of people who are saying we no longer trust those who are at the top and telling us what the shape of the earth is, because when you go back and look for the building blocks, the foundational points, you can't find them. They're, and you're saying, hold on a second, this is science. This is science, which the point of science is skepticism. It is trying to take whatever the current going truth is, knocking it off the perch with something that better fits our reality. And that's what science should be, right? A progression throughout time of getting better, getting closer to the truth. And at some point, science changed. They
decided to find the truth and explain everything.
And then just block the rest and say, you're an idiot if you look into this. And they invoked words like logic, where they call what they call logic is basically their opinion, their ideas of how the universe was formed, their ideas of there being no God and that evolution is responsible for everything on Earth. They take that idea and they just called it logic, and then said anybody speaking against this is an idiot. So they really use some crafty methods to create a world where you either believe their religion and you can be considered smart, or you don't and you're considered an idiot, a flat earther.
Well, to me, if you take a look at the globe, for instance, versus the flat plane model, flat motionless plane is logical to me. If you look at the globe, we're spinning 1,000 miles an hour. We're floating through space at 25,000 miles an hour. There's a lot of different variables there that have to be explained away in order to get to the globe hypothesis. So at the very beginning, everybody should be at flat motionless plane and then work their way out from there. And if somebody can prove the globe, then by all means, please do. But it seems like scientists are working backwards.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I think that's, I know a lot of people think that it's a deception from the very get-go, and I'm not sure so much that it's that, or if it's they made a mistake and realized at a certain point, we can't go back and say we made a mistake, because that would be admitting, the church was right. And, they don't want to admit that, just like I know you guys would agree with us that the church wasn't necessarily right. It just so happens that science stepped in and said, okay, we're done with this. We're going to create a new idea, a new vision.
That's completely opposite of the church's ideas.
And that's crazy. If you've ever looked into that, I know Russian Vids does a couple good videos on that. The amount of opposites, whereas if the Bible says something, that science has just turned it on its head. If the Bible says that the earth came first, then the sun, so science says nope, sun came first, then the earth. Or Bible says it was birds and reptiles, and science says no, reptiles and birds. So it's like really funny that whatever was said in the Bible, they just tried to turn it on its head. Certainly what it appears to look like.
I sent you an article a couple of days ago. I don't know if you had a chance to look over it, but it says remarkable new theory says that there's no gravity, no dark matter, and that Einstein was wrong. According to Professor Eric Valendi, an expert in string theory from the University of Amsterdam, he's come to the conclusion, as you have and several others, that all of these theories, gravity, dark matter, and all of these things that we have to have in order to prove the current universe model that has really never been proven, but are really just leaps of faith. You're putting in a lot more faith to believe in the universe model than you are just looking and taking a look around and believing what you see. But according to him, you're absolutely spot on in your hypothesis.
Yeah, I know. I've read him about a year ago that he was doing a lot of the really groundbreaking research into the idea that gravity isn't true, which I think a lot more scientists should be doing, because gravity cannot be shown to be working as it's supposed to in the universe. When they look out at the galaxies and they look at distant galaxies, gravity stops working like it does here on Earth as far as the numbers they have. So that's why they've invoked dark matter, dark energy, all kinds of things that, now 97% of the universe has never been observed. And these are all things that happen simply because science can't say that the Earth is at the center of the universe. That it goes against their religion, technically. It goes against what science has built itself as a definition. They say that there can be nothing from outside, right? There can be no higher power. So if they have two options, like, well, our observations show us the Earth can be in the center, or it's part of this crazy, system, well, they can't say the Earth is at the center, because then the next question from everybody would be why? Who put us here? Why are we here?
Or we are important. Right. They don't want you to think that.
No. It's the last thing they want you to think. So what do we get instead? We get a crazy model of infinity of space, which, we get all these people coming and saying, well, what's at the edge of the Earth? What's outside the edge of the Earth? It's like, I don't know. What's outside the edge of space? It's the same thing. They'll say, well, what holds your sun and moon up in the sky? It's like, well, what holds your sun and moon up in the sky? It's just you've been told it's that wonderful G word, gravity.
That is very true. They come up with theory after theory, like what's at the edge of the universe? Well, there's another universe there, and there's a multiverse, and then the layers just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I remember growing up as a kid and looking at all these photos of space and going, wow, how did they get all these pictures? That's so amazing. And then come to find out it's just created on a computer.
Yeah. It's like, where's the pictures of the Earth if you can take such good pictures of Jupiter and Pluto? Yeah. They won't turn it back on the Earth, though. So it certainly is an interesting area of study for us, and it just reveals itself more and more every day that there is a deception. And, I don't like to even say I know that the Earth is flat, because I don't know what the Earth is, because I was lied to. And in researching that lie, it just seems peculiar to me that there's certain things like the flat Earth that were taught as stupid. That, to me, it doesn't seem like you would, if it was really a ball and that flat Earth was disproven through various experiments, or, then we would be taught those things in school. Hey, ancient people thought it was flat, but here are the several reasons we know it's not. Well, instead, they give us a few kind of quick one-overs, like, boats go down bottom first, which if you go to my channel, you can see that we've already proven that that's not what's happening. Mm-hmm. And, then they say, what else did they give us?
The shadow on the moon.
The shadow on the moon.
Their basic 10 things.
You would think kids in school would be challenged to come up with the proofs that the Earth is a globe, but they just gloss over it. It's been studied, it's been finished, it's done. Don't even ever think about it again. They throw that picture of the flat Earth in our face with the water falling off the edge.
Right.
I was never shown as a kid anything about any kind of a 50-foot ice wall, 100-foot ice wall.
No, because that would kind of make sense.
Yeah, then you're all of a sudden like, wait a second, that holds all the water in. Well, that meets my observations with everything I've ever seen about water. That water has edges. It's like either a lake but I've never seen any ball of water spinning through space, keeping its water attached to it. Yeah. It really just becomes, and you talk about going down the rabbit hole. Once you've gone here, and you see what these men are willing to do. And to me, it just has been clear that men have corrupted everything they've ever touched.
Well, I mean, it's like a fundamental Jedi principle. You must unlearn everything that you've learned in order to get to that base level. And that's really, I mean, those words are very true. You have to really just forget about everything and then start to learn everything all over again. Sharee and I were driving down the street the other day, and it was freezing. It was like -8. And the entire city just changes here. We're actually out in the middle of nowhere, but I mean, it's completely white and there's pink sky. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous scene.
Beautiful.
But I looked at her and I said, you know what? If the sun is as far away as what they're saying it is, then tilting the Earth a little bit in the vast distance of the sun really wouldn't create such a dynamic change in temperature. I mean, if you take a heat lamp, for instance, and you move something over an inch that is underneath this heat lamp, you're not going to get this huge change in temperature the way that supposedly you get when the Earth shifts over for the seasons. It makes a lot more sense that these vast changes would happen if the sun was a lot closer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't believe when I found out that the southern summer, so what's going on now, which is our winter up here, and you just said it was -8 where you're at, the sun is actually right now closer by 375 Earth diameters than it is during our summer. I mean, that alone was like one of the big shockers. Like, what are you talking about? How could that possibly be true? And of course, these are things they're not going to teach you in school. They're not going to say to you, hey, by the way, when it's the south summer, the sun is 375 Earth diameters closer than when it's your summer. And I mean, we're from an area where, it's cold today. It's probably, 40 degrees. Mm-hmm. But, to tell me that the sun is closer today than, come July when it will be 100 is insanity. And it just simply is part of the system that has to work in their model. And when you're telling it mathematically and you're drawing it, geometrically, it has to be, as they say. It just has to be the way that they spell it out. And there's so many errors in it from everything. Look at the North and South Pole, the differences between them. In their model, they should be identical. Mm-hmm. That you have half the time with the north pointing to the sun, half the time with the south. If anything, the south, since the sun is so much closer, should have warmer temperatures, should have more life, but they don't. You can go to down at the Georgia Islands, and Captain Cook said there wasn't so much as a stick there to make a toothpick, but you can go 16 degrees further from the equator north, and you have London, England, which is filled with every plant and animal and brush and tree and flower possible. So it's so completely different. Go down to 70 south, and there's nothing. I think there's a total of like 8 species of plant, whereas in the north, at the same area, you have Iceland, which has 890 species of plant. So it doesn't tell a story anymore that meets my reality. And the further you look into it, the more I'm noticing that physicists are actually out there kind of admitting what they've done. They're okay with saying we've made some philosophical decisions. We've based some things that we've done based on modesty. It's the people that follow it that can't admit what's going on. At least the physicist George Ellis is one. Even Stephen Hawking wrote that, many people think that Copernicus proved Ptolemy wrong, but that's not true. That you can actually take the Earth to be spinning or the Earth to be still, and the sun. So it's really surprising to me that it's so open. The truth is there. It's just going to take a while until you get everyone to realize what's happened and to accept it, because there's so many people that are so hateful of this very idea. I'm sure there's people listening now that are losing their minds because someone is questioning the shape of the Earth. And
there's a reason why this whole idea and the system that they've created is has to be taught to kids in school, because no one in their right mind would believe any of it. So they have to indoctrinate children with it in order for it to be believed at all as true.
Yeah. And it wouldn't have been very hard either, because you just have to teach it like basically one generation, and those teachers become those students become your teachers. And so, I get, a lot of people say, oh, you just think every scientist is a liar and you think they're all behind. It's like, no, I don't think any teacher is in on the hoax. I don't think any scientist is in on it. These people are the same as all of us. They've all been fooled. And if you can't go to space, how can you ever disprove what they're saying? I mean, go outside tonight and look up at the stars and realize that the closest star is 25 trillion miles away. That alone, it's right there. You can go outside and look at the stars. It's right above you. It's right there. It's literally, could it be 1,000,000 miles? I guess, maybe. Could it be, 2,000 miles? It probably seems more realistic to me. But 25 trillion? And it's a sun that... we have one sun.
Yeah, one sun.
I certainly don't see it as the sky is filled with suns infinite distance away. And you guys have said it the best, because I know Sharee is into astrology, that it doesn't make a lot more sense if all those things are actually close and impacting, our lives and our thoughts. And just makes more sense to me.
Absolutely. Sharee is our resident skeptic here. She does not, she looks at me and she's like, okay, yeah, no, you make some good points, but she's always got that question in the back of her mind, like the heat lamp thing. I didn't explain it right just now, and she's looking at me like, that doesn't make any sense. So essentially, if you have a heat source that is huge and that far away, moving in that small distance that the Earth is supposed to move doesn't really change the radius of the heat source at all. But if you have a heat source that's much smaller, a lot closer, and then that heat source moves away a little bit, then you can get these vast changes in the temperature. That's what I was getting at.
And that I can agree with. That would make sense. That the sun should probably be a lot closer if it's going to have that much of an impact on whether or not it's 14 degrees or 40 degrees or 80 degrees.
Right, because according to NASA and the current universe model or solar model, the sun is about the size of a basketball, and the Earth is the size of a marble. And these two things are like at a 10-foot room. One is at one side and one's at the other side, and the Earth moves an inch over. Right. And all of a sudden we get these drastic changes in temperature because the Earth moved a little bit, or the sun moved a little bit further away.
I do want to get into the seasons,
it doesn't make sense
though.
to me. Okay.
I do want to get into the seasons on the other side.
Okay, I'll give you the floor when we come back.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back with Jaron and Missa right here on Beyond the Veil. All right, we are back, and as everybody has noticed, we've changed our clock a little bit. I did get an email from one of our affiliates in Tennessee, and they're like, hey, you changed your clock. You didn't tell anybody what's going on here. So I apologize, Paul. I will get you the new clock structure, and we'll work something out. I promise. You're going to love the show. It's going to be huge.
You're going to love it. It's
You're
going to
love
huge.
it. Yes. We haven't gotten any calls from iHeart, too, which is great.
Awesome.
We've just flooded iHeart with flat Earth stuff. We got Mark playing every day, all of his classic episodes. We got Jaron playing every day. Of course, the live show is being carried there. Here we are now on 2 iHeart channels, our BTV dedicated channel and the TFR channel, and we're talking about flat Earth.
Very awesome.
We've kind of snuck in and just kind of gotten into the minds of mainstream listeners here. It's pretty funny. It's great, actually. Anyways, I promised you would have the floor. Take us away, please.
Thank you, Chris. Well, there were a few not issues, and I don't even have a problem with the flat earth theory at all. I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of things about it that, are very, very compelling. And I love you, Jaron and Missa, so don't get me wrong. But problem number one, 70% of the land mass in the world is in the northern hemisphere. So the fact that there's less species of animals, there's less humans in the southern hemisphere is largely due to the fact that the ratio of water to land in the northern hemisphere is around 1-to-1, whereas in the southern hemisphere it's 16-to-1 of water over land. And so there's 16 times more water than there is land in the southern hemisphere. And as a result, you've got pockets that have huge amounts of diversity as far as animal and plant species. If you go down to the rainforest, for instance, there's animal and plant species we haven't even discovered yet down there. There's so much life. Penguins, for instance, are almost entirely southern hemisphere animals. They do not live in the northern hemisphere at all. They just don't prefer that. And so it is a little bit of a misnomer to infer that, there's not as much animal and plant life in the southern hemisphere as the northern hemisphere, because, it would make sense because there's way more water down there. As far as the seasons are concerned, I'm really wondering, how does the flat earth theory come to terms with the change in the seasons, as well as like the way that the sun goes down here at 4:00 in the afternoon. In the summer, it goes down probably at 10 o'clock at night. So it really makes you wonder.
There's the rain for the parade there.
I want.
Thank you.
I want Jaron.
Sound bites.
I want Jaron to explain to me how the seasons work in the flat Earth model.
I'd love to.
Yeah, go ahead.
First off, though,
you all chime in too.
And what you said about the, not being able to call the North and the South the way I did, we have to remember, how did they become how they are? Because again, if you've got a spinning Earth, then you would have that force causing all the water to go to the center. And you would think that all the land masses, the way they describe it, would move in some sort of rhyme or reason. And they don't. I mean, why is there a 2-mile high southern ice cap at all? It only makes sense on a flat Earth where, and I'll go into the seasons here. So you've seen the kind of idea of, the pizza pie, the azimuthal equidistant map, which nobody's saying that's the map because
nobody can know.
I mean, real quick, one of the hardest parts of questioning the globe is that we get people who are saying, where's your model? Where's your map? And challenging us and requiring us to have every detail spelled out already. I mean, we've had, 1,000 people looking at this for, maybe 2 years at the most, whereas their model had 500 years and the very best minds, and they've invoked things such as dark matter, dark energy, relativity, things people can't even explain. They can't, even top-level physicists could not explain to you relativity or special relativity or the general theory. So it just becomes difficult because it's going to take a worldwide effort, just like the idea of, they say now we've got everything mapped, right? We've got the globe mapped. Well, yeah, that took tons of people. That's not just one person who went around drawing the map of the Earth. That took a collaboration between thousands of people, all writing what their knowledge was and kind of putting it together. And then we've got a relatively accurate portrayal of the Earth, even though they've stuck it on a ball. But it's going to take that kind of effort from flat earthers, really. It's going to take, it's not going to happen until the globe gets shown to be fallacious, because then we can have a bunch of people. We'll have 7 billion people, or call it 4 billion or 10, whatever you think the Earth is filled with. And you'll have all those people who are so desperate to know the truth. And that's when we'll actually be able to show a map and be able to show some of these things. So as far as the azimuthal map goes in the seasons, where the Tropic of Capricorn is and the Tropic of Cancer and the equator. And those are basically the boundaries of the sun. So during our summer, during the North summer, the sun is up at the Tropic of Cancer, and it does its circle there. So for us, we would have much longer days because we're going to see the sunrise earlier in the day. It's going to be above us for a much longer time, and then it sets. And then it kind of wanders back towards the equator, and that would be, at the equinox, and then it goes down to the Tropic of Capricorn, which is the huge outer path, and that's why we have much shorter days, because the sun is much further from us. It's lower in our sky. I'm sure you guys see it quite low in the sky, right? Like right now, it would be very low in your southern sky.
Oh, yeah, and it gets dark at 4:30 in the afternoon here.
Right, and it's because it's going on a much larger path. It has to, it's going to head up around the United States, and then it's going to go all the way out by the, southern parts of Africa and then the southern parts of South America. So it's taking a huge path, whereas during the summer, it's a much closer circle, much tighter circle. And that's why the North has the 24-hour sun during the summer. It's because if you're at the North Pole, you would actually never see the sun drop below your horizon. That's why you see it. They just see it kind of going through like almost a wave pattern.
And in terms of season wise, like why it's colder, in the winter and obviously warmer in the summer, is the angles of light and heat. The oblique angles give less light and heat per unit of area. So during the winter, when it's on the outer skirts, we're getting the oblique angle. So we're getting less light and less heat.
Correct.
At our end, because we're more further away.
Same with them, right? Because they're the southern sky, the sun is way, so the angles are coming very much sideways slanted.
During our summer, they're at more of 90-degree angles, which is a more direct heat. So we're getting a lot warmer then. And when you were talking about the southern plants or whatever, what you were meaning to say was Antarctica.
What did I say? Sorry.
Well, because what Sharee was saying about how there's not very many plant species, and we're speaking of the North and South poles.
Oh, okay. So you're speaking about the poles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just the North in general, because like you said, I do understand that there's 90%, or it might be 92% of the population of the Earth is in the Northern Hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that makes more sense when you look at the flat Earth and you realize that the sun is going to spend more time in the North than it does in the South, and that's why it makes sense to me on a flat Earth that the South, the extremities of the Earth, is the frozen tundra. It's the place that gets it's a perpetual winter. I mean, with the globe model, turn the globe so it's tilted with the South Pole pointed at the sun. Mm-hmm. It stays there for 4 or 5 months. Why would that never melt? Why would there just be? And granted, it is 2 miles high, but again, I go back to how did they become like they are? Unless you can explain it in a flat Earth model. In the globe model, I just can't see the things happening the way that they did. I don't know about you guys. When I grew up at least, I had a globe, and on the top of the globe was a North Pole ice cap.
Yes.
Right. And then when people started doing more investigating and traveling.
Asking questions and traveling.
Right, and traveling, they saw that there is no North Pole ice cap up there. It's just water. So now if you look at a globe, they've changed it. And these are the kind of things that make it, obvious to me that there's a deception involved. That they wanted. That's why we all believed in Santa Claus and that he lived at the North Pole. And nobody questioned there is no North Pole. It's just a bunch of water there, because we didn't know. We were taught that there was a North Pole ice cap because they wanted to keep it the same.
It had to be the same.
It had to be the same. It's the only thing that makes sense. Now,
that is 100% true. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
The ice caps up in the North Pole, and looking on Google satellite, whatever, and they were gone?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're just gone. And they'll blame that on global warming. I'm sure that's their reasoning.
Well, yeah,
but
they're trying to say now that the South Pole is melting so quickly that it's going to raise global, water levels by 10 feet in the next 50 years or something drastic like that. And they said the reason why it's happening is because when the sun is hitting the southern hemisphere during our winter, it's melting it too quickly.
Right.
We got a question from the chat room.
It's a good question.
If the Earth was flat, then you would be able to see the sun from anywhere you are on the flat plane.
Okay, so again, if somebody's thinking of the sun as being 899,000 miles across, which is what the globe believes, or that it's 93 million miles away, then those things make sense. But the sun is much, much closer and much, much, much smaller. I don't know those numbers. I don't even really think the sun that we see is the actual sun. I think it's kind of like what's an apparent sun. But picture being in whatever room you're in now, your bedroom or your living room, and picture that room, instead of being as small as it is, picture it as big as your city. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now that room is just huge, but the roof is still, or the ceiling's still the same height. And then picture something that was on the ceiling and it starts heading away from you. Well, pretty quickly, that's going to meet the floor because that's the way our eyes work. The
perspective works. They go down.
Right.
The ground goes up to your eyes and the sky goes down to your
correct. The ceiling meets the horizon line. And that's true if you go outside and watch a plane fly away from you. The plane does not fly up into the sky and disappear. The plane flies and disappears at the horizon because it's the way our eyes work. The sky, when we say it slants down, that's just to our perspective. I mean, in my opinion, the sun is never lower than your feet, ever. It's always above your head. And that's why one of the things I read in a John Abizade book was he said, until somebody can show sun rays entering any room of any house, on any hill, anywhere on earth, those sun rays need to enter the window and hit the ceiling. And until that happens, then there's no reason to believe ever that the sun is below your feet. So if you think of the globe model, the sun is always below your feet when it's rising or when it's setting. And so if you put a house on top of the Himalayas, and there should be sun rays that come up when the sun's rising, the rays should come up and into that house window and hit the ceiling of the room. But it's never been shown to happen. So when you start realizing things like that, it makes much more sense that the sun is always above your head. Now, there are people who say, well, what about anticrispicular rays, which are the ones you've probably seen that look like the rays are shining up from where the sun is at. But those are actually rays that are on the, I want to call it a ceiling, but they're, the ceiling is slanting down towards the horizon. The sun is coming up. So those rays are shown on that slanted sky. And but again, if it was below your feet, then those rays would be hitting the earth somewhere with rays coming up. But if anybody can find that, I would love to see it. Show me rays of the sun entering any house. It can be on any hill in Colorado and can be as high as you want. Have those rays entering a window and hitting the ceiling of a house or a room. And until that's shown, I don't think you can say that the sun is ever below your feet. It's simply losing it due to perspective.
And I know that that's a lot of the questions that we hear is, well, if the earth is flat, why can't we see X and XYZ city down like 80 miles away or whatever? Well, it's because obviously things get tinier and tinier as they get further away. So even if the earth was flat, or even if the earth was a globe, things would be getting smaller.
Yeah, you hear Bill Nye, who's, great scientist and everything. He said in a recent thing he had, somebody asked him about the earth being flat, and he says, well, why can't you stand in New York and see London? And it's like, dude, are you for reals? If a car drives away from you, within 100 yards, it disappears. It gets so small you can't see it anymore. What do you think would happen to London if you're looking across the Atlantic Ocean? It would be the size of a head of a needle. I mean, it's not even going to be. Smaller. I mean, yeah, it disappears because things that go further away from us get smaller. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of things that they bring up, things like that just baffle me. Like, if we're going to talk science, let's talk science. But what you just said was extremely dumb. Yeah. It's like there's nobody in their right mind who should think that because we are on a flat earth that you should be able to see infinitely far. And yet I hear it all the time.
The perspective issue goes away or something.
Well, when you think about the sailboat situation, for instance, a lot of people thought, as you mentioned before, that a sailboat disappears over the horizon because it's going down the curvature of the Earth. And then as we got more powerful telescopes and cameras and proven things on YouTube, people are able to restore that sailboat. And it goes to show that it's based on perspective. So the further something gets away from you, the tinier it gets. And then as soon as it disappears into the horizon. And then I heard, or I read an article about a news broadcast that was picked up, that was broadcasting in London, and the radio waves were picked up here in the United States. Well, that can't happen on a globe because the radio waves go in one direction and they would go up and out of the atmosphere. But because you're able to pick up the broadcast from the UK, that changes the entire dynamic.
Yeah, I think there's so much like that. And I feel so bad because we should be so much further ahead. Yeah. There's a lot of things that have held us back because of the this belief, the belief in space, the belief in the vacuum, the belief in orbits. I don't think that any of them are true. When it comes to proof, that's what's missing from a lot of these areas.
The testable and observable part of it,
Right.
of everything.
You are forced to believe NASA that these 2-ton or more satellites are being taken up in rockets, released, and put in perfect orbit, even though we know that they degrade, and they just say, oh no, we put these little squirt guns on the side of them. But show me one picture of a satellite not being built by NASA in their factories, but one that's being released in space. That all you get is CGI cartoon graphics. And, it comes down to I always talk about like the man behind the curtain, that people don't understand. With the mathematical model like they've drawn, when they say, hey guys, we need you to build a satellite, we're going to take it to Jupiter. You have real scientists who are really working on this satellite. And then they put it together. It's got all the pieces. It's got all the bells and whistles. Let's send it up. Now, at that point, when it goes up, they just sit at their computers and wait for returned information. But they've already programmed where the craft is supposed to go. So all somebody needs to do is sit behind a curtain and resend that information back to the computers. And there's people sitting there saying, oh, there it is. Okay, we're right on track. And every once in a while, you probably delay it 30 seconds so that people stress out, like, oh, what's going on? It hasn't talked to us in 30 seconds. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay, thank goodness. It must have had a quirk. So, I mean, it's so easy to do that I can't understand why people don't look into it. It's like I just can't get over the people who don't question it. Like, what does it hurt to question it? What could it possibly hurt by challenging the current belief?
It takes work to challenge something, and a lot of people are just, I think, lazy. And also, not just lazy, that's kind of a rude way to say it, but also caught up in their way of living, and they have to go to work. They have to do all these things, to provide for their family. So I kind of understand why a lot of people don't want to look into it, because they don't have time to,
I mean, but like a 24-hour, 24/7 view of the Earth from the ISS, which is in orbit of the Earth, has been for 16 years, yet they've never once provided a 24/7 video feed of the Earth. This is an organization that gets $50 million a day. $50 million. And what if you ask somebody, okay, they've been given $50 million a day for 50 years, 60 years now. What have they provided for mankind? What has NASA given mankind besides some pictures, some moon landings, some guys doing spacewalks,
some animations,
and this whole idea of satellites, that satellites are orbiting around us and providing it, when we already know that NASA sends up 50 helium balloons a day, and that they can keep them up for months. They've figured out how to basically send them up with like CO2 tanks, and when they start to come down, they reinflate themselves a little bit to keep themselves up. I mean, that's what our satellites are. They're balloons. That your DirecTV satellite is pointed at a balloon in the sky that is far cheaper than the $750 million that they charge DirecTV to put it up there.
And which would also would only work on a flat Earth, because if the satellite went on the other side of the globe, then you would lose DirecTV every 14 hours.
Right, and if you can bounce it...
Or 24, sorry.
If you can bounce it, then why can't we get a 24/7 feed from the ISS?
Well, I think it was...
on the night side.
I think it was your video where you pointed out that GPS was actually ground position located. I don't remember the exact term.
Ground positioning system.
Yeah, ground positioning system as opposed to global positioning system.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, that's pretty obvious, even if you look it up, because a lot of people think that their phone talks to space. But your phone talks to the cell tower, and they say the cell tower talks to space. That's what they say. But, I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense that that's the way things would be done, that you would have to basically call the tower, which calls the satellite, which calls back, and then it sends it to you. And then you look at the plane flights that we've all seen that disappear once they get about 200 miles or so off the coast, and that's basically mostly in the south. That they just disappear off the radar, and that's because they're
too far from
the radar stations, the radar tracking areas. And that's what happened, in my opinion, at least, to MH370, is that you've got a plane that went south. It's out over the Indian Ocean, so there's no such thing as a satellite tracking it. And if there was, we would know exactly where it was.
Yeah.
You would know exactly where it went down, and you would be able to find the wreckage in a day. But instead, we're stuck with a missing plane on the Earth that nobody knows where it went, because there's no satellite tracking it. It left the area of the coastlines,
the range of
and it becomes, and then what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to like make every once in a while it's supposed to make a call.
A ping?
Yeah,
so
it's
to
supposed to
speak.
ping something, and you know, it just is ridiculous that if satellites existed, why would we not track planes? It just doesn't make any sense. It would be so easy to do. You put a little dish on top of the plane, and it talks to this. Well, how many satellites does it say they have? Three or 4,000 in operation right now. Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, and to think none of those things ever get hit by a meteorite. You know, all the shooting stars that we see, they actually say are meteorites hitting the Earth's atmosphere, which means if they've gotten that far, they've gone past the ISS. They've already gone past every satellite. I don't remember the last time everyone lost their DirecTV on a Thursday night because, I mean, imagine what kind of, you know, that would be terrible. You'd have to build the new satellite, get it back up into orbit. It would take months, if not longer, but none of that ever happens. It just, everyone continues to pay their $100 a month for DirecTV because DirecTV had to pay $750 million to put their satellite up. So it's hard to even tell where the whole...
It's a whole crumbling
who's
of
involved,
everything.
right?
Yeah.
Like, does DirecTV even know that their satellite is not coming from where they think? I would tend to think a couple people at the top know.
I don't think they know.
They might not, you know, and
They make money, so they don't really care where it comes from.
Exactly. A lot.
Interesting. We have about a minute and a half left in this segment, but there was a question from the chat room about HARP, and it was a very short question. Just, can you explain HARP on a flat Earth? I don't know if we need to save this for the next segment or not.
I would, because it's like, remember the electricity in the sky and how it would hit up, it would point directly to a point, and then it can pinpoint back down, almost like when you play a pool. You know, you can hit the ball on the side and calculate where it's going to hit or whatever. So that sort of thing.
It's either putting more electricity into the sky, but there's, you know, according to Tesla, once you get up to 35,000 feet, there's just nothing but electricity freely flowing. Because, you know, if you try and start a plane when you're 35,000 feet in the sky, you can't do it. Your plane won't start because the spark plug, when you flip the ignition, the electricity goes and just, because there's no atmosphere there, it just dissipates into all of the air. There's
I didn't know that.
Right, because on Earth, down below, we have a good air protection, right? Or it's a good conductor, air. So when you spark your car or your plane on the ground or 20,000 feet high, that there's enough atmosphere there that allows the spark plug to turn it over.
Because it's more focused in that area.
Right, but when you get up above 35,000 feet, there is no more atmosphere. So Tesla said that whole entire sky is filled with electricity. And there's a lot of people on YouTube that are starting to talk about the fact that, you know, every building we see has that huge pole on top of it that they say is like a grounding pole for the lightning. But some people are saying they're all pulling electricity straight from the sky and charging us all. And I certainly wouldn't put it past them. How easy would that hoax be?
So easy.
So, you know, like I said, the rabbit hole goes deep when you start getting into this, because with this kind of deception, there's really nothing they're not capable of. And they've realized that people are just easy to fool.
Well, you're absolutely right, but the reaction is expected. I reacted the exact same way. A friend of mine came to me and said, "Hey, I think the Earth is flat." I said, "You're crazy!" And I thought that he was legitimately crazy for about a year until I saw Flat Earth Clues. And then I said, "Hey, wait a minute, there's actually something to this." And then the deeper you go down the rabbit hole, you're absolutely right. It's incredible. I mean, if it was just one or two anomalies, that's one thing. But this is anomaly after anomaly after anomaly, and so many holes in the globe. We'll be right back. All right. Happy New Year to everybody on the East Coast. If we have any East Coast listeners out there, please let us know how 2017 is and if there's anything we should expect as we move into 2017, because you guys obviously are a few hours ahead of us. 2017 has been a very interesting time for celebrity deaths. Of course, just recently, Carrie Fisher and her mother were heart attacked. That's the only way that I can describe this. I mean, what are the chances that Carrie Fisher dies of a heart attack one day and then her mother dies the next day of a heart attack? I think there's something more to the story. I don't want to get too conspiratorial here, but because I haven't looked into it. But if anybody out there thinks it's worth looking into, definitely look into it, because I think there was something a lot deeper going on. And I'm looking through all of these celebrity deaths of 2016, and there is just one after another, after another, after another. I mean, there's dozens and dozens and dozens. 2016 was definitely a very, very strange year. David Bowie, of course, was one of the most notable ones. A bunch of people that I've never heard of before. Oh, this guy, Abe Vigoda. Vigoda, yeah. He played some mob characters and then played in a couple of other movies as well. Edgar Mitchell, one of the supposed astronauts to supposedly walk on the moon. But according to some of the WikiLeaks disclosures that may be coming out, as Jaron highlighted in the first hour, or second hour of the broadcast, first hour that he was on, may not have actually happened. And I wonder what it's like if that is true, and I'm leaning more towards it being true than not true, the idea that it's a hoax. But how would that be to keep that secret for your entire life and take it to your deathbed, literally, and live your entire life basically as a fraud? I mean, that's got to really weigh heavily on a soul. George Gaines died just in 2016. He was the dad from Punky Brewster.
The dad from Punky Brewster.
Yeah.
I used to love that show.
Several others here. George Kennedy and Nancy Reagan.
Nancy Reagan, yeah.
Yeah.
Just say no.
George Martin, the manager for the Beatles.
Interesting.
Yeah, many. I mean, I'm sitting here like scrolling
Earl
through
Haggard.
the list.
Yeah.
China. Oh, China from WWF.
Oh, wow.
Died this year. That's weird. Prince.
Yeah,
of
that's
course.
a big one. Yeah.
You
know, people are wondering in the chat room
Muhammad Ali.
What we think about the Carrie Fisher thing.
Kimbo Slice. I don't know what I think about the Carrie Fisher thing. There was something going on in the background there that I feel was the cause of this. Some people are very quick to point to Illuminati sacrifice, though. Oh, it's an Illuminati sacrifice for this new film, Rogue One. I don't quite go down that route immediately because, if you do that and you do that wrongfully or erroneously, that's a better way to put it, then essentially what's happening is you're not revealing what's really going on. So let's say Carrie Fisher was murdered because she knew something about Lucas, or maybe involvement in Pizzagate, maybe something like that, and we say, oh, it was an Illuminati sacrifice, then you're completely missing that other connection there that could possibly be there. Right. So anyways, we'll get back to Jaron and Missa right on the other side right here on Beyond the Veil. All right, let's stir up a little more controversy with Jaron and Missa right here on Beyond the Veil. Of course, hosts of Jeranism Raw right here on True Frequency Radio, Mondays, 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock.
6 to 9.
Pacific time. And also, if you haven't checked out Jaron's YouTube channel, you got to go to youtube.com/Jeranism or Jeranism.com. Also, he does the Globebuster show. Jaron, real quick, tell us about the Globebuster show. Yeah,
you forgot to mention that we are the #1 show on TFR between 6 and 9 p.m. Pacific
You are,
time.
Absolutely.
Just making sure. I like to get that out there. On Sundays at noon, we do a live show called Globebusters. It's youtube.com/Globebusters1, the #1. And it's a guy, Bob, that I originally met him year ago now, a year and a half. Yeah, when he was the one who bought me the laser for the laser test we did across the 4-mile stretch. And from there, we just became good friends. And one night I wanted to take some calls, and I just said, hey, you want to come on live with me? I've never done a live thing before, but we'll try it. And people really liked it and said, you guys should do a weekly thing. And we actually were, for a while, doing it twice weekly. We were also watching the ISS. But after that kind of got old, we decided just to do the Sunday show. So, yeah, right now it's about a 3-hour show. We've had lots of guests, Robert Sungenis, some other good guests, Santos Bonacci. So it's been definitely a good time. We enjoy it. So, yeah, check it out. It's noon Pacific on Sundays.
Excellent. We need to get Santos back on. It's been a long time since we've had him on, and there was a little bit of a falling out, I guess. He just went off on everybody, including us. We never get anything to him. But then he publicly apologized, and I was like, wow, that... I see things, I see a person for who they are as opposed to, and what's inside of them as opposed to what they've done in the past. And it takes a lot to come out and apologize to everybody. So he's good in my book.
Yeah, he'll be on our show Monday the 9th of January. So I know that's coming up. But and about Carrie Fisher, just because you were mentioning her, I did read today that Disney had a $50 million insurance policy on her.
That's right.
See, there you go.
So it's kind of like Michael Jackson with the whole Sony thing.
Yeah, because I guess they still had her contracted for another. Well, there's a movie coming out next year that she's already filmed, but then there's another one, episode 9 or whatever, that they had not been taped yet. So they had this $50 million insurance policy, so they'll get paid for that, and then probably just CGI her in, and probably.
You have a really
Yeah,
good. You said something about what was it? Like last year about how we're gonna start seeing a ton of celebrities die because they're at that age. The celebrities that we've seen and loved when we were kids are going to start dying because they were that much older than us at that time.
Yeah, I've always said that it's going to be, as years go on, it's just going to keep compiling to the point where all we hear about is deaths. Because with the TV era, all the people that we saw, at least people saw in the 70s and 80s, all those people are now getting to that age where, we're going to lose a lot of them. I can't imagine what it will be like in 20 years or 30 years. There'll be so many people that we all knew, because think of all the celebrities' names whereas there wasn't that kind of knowledge of people 20, 30 years ago. So it's just going to, I think, it certainly seems like that's happening. This year seems like there's a ton. And next year, I bet you'll be even more. Although my prediction didn't come true. I predicted Bill Cosby January 1st last year. That was my prediction.
I said he died socially.
Yeah. He
definitely did that.
He might as well be dead.
Yeah, exactly. He probably wishes he was.
Yeah, right.
I think he's blind now.
Yeah, he lost his sight.
Yeah.
Oh, did he really?
Ouch.
Oh, interesting.
She probably deserves.
Hope it's not
much
syphilis.
You probably hope it is.
No, I said I hope it's not.
Oh, yeah, she said I hope it's not.
Oh, not okay. Sorry. No. No, we had our prediction show last year, and we didn't do too well.
We did terrible. It was really bad.
I predicted Obama would still be president. She predicted Hillary would win. So
we don't know yet.
True. We have to wait to do our recap of that till after the inauguration.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny with the whole Trump-Clinton thing? I have been saying for ever since Trump started running that they're going to put Trump in office because Clinton is just way too dirty. And then in the 11th hour, I went on Lucky's show, and I'm like, they're going to give it to Clinton. At the very last minute, it was literally the day before the elections. Yeah.
It was funny. We went to dinner the other night with my dad and his wife, and she's a big Democrat, and I know that, but I don't think Missa really knows that.
I didn't.
And so Missa was saying, we were talking about the election, and then Missa said, "Oh, it was so funny seeing all those people cry the next day after Hillary lost." And I just immediately pictured, I said, "Oh, I guarantee my dad's wife is somebody who cried."
Yeah.
It was just so funny because she put this really dirty look on her face, well, it's so shocking to everyone that.
And I said, it wasn't shocking to me. And I was like, oh, I sort of got a vibe from you.
Missa's it was so funny seeing everybody crying. I'm like, oh, she was definitely one of those crying.
That's so funny.
Too funny.
So, regarding 2017, we saw this one scientist come out and basically say, hey, there's no gravity, there's none of that. Do you think we'll see more and more scientists coming out and disproving what are some of the fundamental principles of the globe theory?
Well, I think so much rests on this moon thing because I don't think anybody realizes how big it is. I mean, it's so multifold. Because if we didn't go to the moon, well, let's put it this way. If we did go to the moon, then I believe all the rest. I believe they know the distance to the sun. They know the size of it. They know to Jupiter, to Saturn. They know the sizes of it. They understand gravity, the makeup of space. I have to believe all that if we went to the moon. But if we didn't go to the moon, then it just brings so much into play because I think that we were indoctrinated with the moon idea because this way we look up and see this ball in the sky and picture, well, those men went there and just landed so people can live on a ball. That people live on balls that are in space and that's they're habitable and that they're terraform. And if we didn't go, then I think it really is going to bring into question everything because then how do we know they know what space is? How do we know they know what size planets are, what gravity does in space, what the sun is, how far away it is?
That's really how we got on. That's how we got started, basically, was the moon landings. Once we were like, oh, my gosh, what? As we looked into it, then from there stemmed everything else. So that's how I know by the moon landings being questioned and possibly proven that they didn't happen, not possibly, but eventually, hopefully, worldwide. It will only have to happen to where people
for everyone.
Yeah.
Because step 2, after we realized the moon landings were faked, is we said, wait, we need to see video of the Earth. Oh, they have an ISS live. And we sat there and watched it for 2 or 3 nights. And we looked at each other and said, either the entire world is evolving and we're not, or we are and they're not. Because we look at it and it's not real.
It's just obvious.
It's just obviously not real. It's not, whether it's bent by fisheye lenses or whether it's simply a conveyor belt screen, it's not reality. It just isn't where we live. And, the way that they have no stars in space, you never get to see stars. They don't show any lights on the Earth, any lightning. But if you go look it up, ISS night view, they'll show you tons of movies and pictures of brilliant lit up United States and Australia. It's beautiful, but they can't show any of that live. That's all post-production, which should tell you something.
And I think that if science is who they say they are, in terms of that they look at things with a skeptical eye and try to prove things and things like that, then I do think that science will have to, just by default, they have to continue to, we'll definitely see scientists continue to almost prove and disprove things. Because they will have to. They got away with it for so long to where they could just ignore things, but with social media and things like that are becoming more.
It still scares me, though,
I
with
just think
space.
they have to say something, or their silence is going to be their death, sort of thing.
But with space, nobody can go there. See, because everything else, science has to develop as fast as humans kind of develop. Unless you have something like Tesla, where maybe J.P. Morgan buys the patent and hides it or whatever. But I'm saying anything like computers, basically because people can work on them right there. There's nothing being hidden from the computer world, or people say, oh, I can't believe you make fun of science because of space, but you're on a computer. Where do you think that came from? It's no, those are totally different ends of the spectrum.
Things.
I respect the scientists who built the computer, who built my car, who built everything that I use in my daily life. But I have a problem with the science like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's got a PhD in something that he's never touched, a place he's never been, something he's never been able to see. He's got a PhD for believing the words of a book.
For being able to repeat shit.
Right. That's all it comes down to, is to get a PhD, you just simply are better at regurgitating information, memorizing the words of a book and putting them down on a test. That's all you need to get a PhD in astrophysics or in theoretical physics, which don't get me started on that. The theory of the physical world. It's we really need that. But it just kind of leads you to realize that there's a problem in that one sector, which I don't even call science anymore. It's an art. In fact, mathematics used to mean astronomy until just about 1700, year 1700. So the whole thing is there's a problem with the idea of a place where we can't go and only NASA goes. And that's the thing that makes me madder than anything, is that we've already paid the money. We all pitched in so that one entity would take all of our dollars and say, okay, now we can build a rocket and we'll go up and tell everybody what's up there. But they lied. So all this work that I do daily, research, looking into things, planning experiments, talking to people, I don't need to do it because they already know.
Because somebody knows out there.
Yeah, and that's the most infuriating thing, is that I can understand if this was back in the old days, 1,000 years ago, where people were actually on the cutting edge of discovering things. I don't feel like that because it's they already know. They're just hiding it from us. So you're chasing different stories, but you always have to watch out, because are they putting something, a lot of people saying that's what's going on with Pizzagate. I'm not one of them, but a lot of people think that was put there as a trap. I tend to think it's more absolutely true. And when it gets reported, well, then they cover it up and
call it fake news.
Right. And they own the CIA and the FBI, so nobody's going to arrest them anyway. They can get away with anything. I've said before, Hillary could go out in the street and shoot a citizen right in the face on live TV, and nothing would happen to her.
Right.
Who's going to do anything?
They would say it's fake news.
Right. Fake news. Yeah. You didn't really do that.
Well, with the Pizzagate stuff, we were working on a film, and what we came to the conclusion of is that 90% of the stuff on YouTube is BS that leads to nowhere. But it's done so in order to cover up what's actually going on. And what's actually going on is a global network that is way more horrifying than people even realize.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We did all the work on the Hampstead case. So, we we've been knee deep in it, and we know that it's going on, and it's at the highest levels of government.
Much,
yeah. I mean, in the whole Hampstead case, you have everyone from CPS to the police to the judge to the lawyers. Everybody is to BBC.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody is in on it in some way, and that gets really scary because
then you have no power. You have no way of winning, even if you tried.
Yeah.
When the judges come into it.
Did you guys ever interview Gunderson, the ex-FBI guy?
No, but he's been on a couple of stations. I mean, a couple of shows here on the station.
Oh, he has.
Great.
Yeah.
So I mean, he spelled
No. I'm getting him confused with Springmeyer.
Yeah.
Fritz Springmeyer was on with Chris Everard quite a few times.
But I don't think Ted Gunderson's ever
No.
been on a show.
And he died in 2012 or somewhere around there?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Didn't he die a couple of years ago?
I'll have to check that.
No, that's a Mandela effect.
Be dead.
It's the Mandela defect.
It's
because
the
there's just
Mandeka
people
effect.
not able to research things before they repeat them.
Yep.
Mandela defect.
Well, we had to prove. I mean, it proved it ourselves because I thought it was Sex in the City,
Mm-hmm.
and Missa said no. I used to watch that show. She goes, "It's about a girl who wrote about sex and the city."
Yeah.
And that's like one of the evidences right there. I just always heard in my head Sex in the City. It's the only thing that made sense. Why would it be Sex and the City?
Yeah.
But when you find out that the reason behind the show, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I just can't listen.
Yeah.
The one that got me, though, is Mirror, Mirror on the Wall.
Yeah, that one is that one's tough.
Well, according to
I remember that,
Snopes,
too.
it never actually existed. It was always Magic Mirror. People just misquoted it their entire lives.
I
That's
believe
a
that.
bunch of BS.
No, but that's absolutely true. It's absolutely true.
Well, they have a live action movie called Mirror, Mirror. That was
Right.
based
Not-
on Snow White.
I think they even have like refrigerator magnets. I saw somebody had.
They might not have
And
ever
it said
seen
like mirror.
Snow White.
Yeah, they're just making it up.
Or they just
Gunderson
thought it
died
was.
2011.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't know.
He is past.
But he has documented that the media is controlled. He's documented the pedophile rings. He's witnesses that the FBI would just reject and not respond to. So he's done a ton of research that is really important. That's just been swept under the rug too. So
Yeah, it's tough because that's one of those subjects that, like I said, if you own the FBI and the CIA and they're basically operating for you, that's where I struggle a little bit with what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
How do you end that? I think it has to be like you guys making that movie, or you have to get them information out of there. But when I started looking into it, same thing that you saw, Chris, I saw so many people that were pulling pictures from the internet that didn't belong in the story, that were basically kind of making the fake news
disinfo.
out of it.
It was
Yeah.
disinfo to discredit the whole story, just like we saw with the Hampstead case. Same
Yep.
thing.
Yeah, and that gets upsetting because you're like, man, especially because they're paying people to be out there doing this kind of stuff. Sure, some people are doing it on their own, but when you make the money, what do you care if you have to pay somebody to go do some nonsense and put out fake stories or make the story look uncredible?
Yeah.
It's
That's exactly what they did with Pizzagate. It's creating an artificial straw man so they can say, "Oh no, it's proven false." The biggest straw man was that they're keeping these kids in the basement under Pizzagate, under the pizza shop, whatever it was called, I forget.
Right.
Comet Ping Pong, but there is no basement under Comet Ping Pong, and I'm like, none of my research ever suggested that they were taking kids to the basement at Comet Ping Pong. That's not where this leads at all, but that's the talking point they're running with to debunk the entire idea.
right. And I don't know if you saw Megyn Kelly sell out an interview that.
Oh boy,
that
guy
was so bad.
That guy was creepy. He
was creepy.
Who?
Yeah.
James Alefantis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very creepy.
He said people were calling in and ordering cheese pizza. It was really strange,
Yeah, it
even
was
though
so
we
weird
have
that he said
cheese
that.
pizza here. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Okay,
This is
we were watching
What's-
Family Guy, and there's a scene where Peter's working in a pizza shop, and this couple comes over and says, "I would like a cheese pizza," and he pulls it out of the oven. He's like, "You people disgust me.
People
And-
make me sick.
Yeah, and like throws the pizza at him, and then it cuts over to another scene, and you know how they do the cut over,
The cut
the
scenes.
cutaway.
Yeah,
they show
cutaway.
the house. And then it's Stewie, and he's got his bear, his little teddy bear, with a plastic bag over his head, suffocating him.
Really?
Oh.
Yes.
Strangling him. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that? What is the reason for that scene?
It was.
There's
I
no
think it was a
reason for
nod.
it.
There's
Yeah.
no. It was totally random and not in the.
Oh.
Yeah, it was like one of those cutaways. Like what do they say when they? Oh, you think that's
You think
bad?
that's bad?
It's a little South Park stab at him. But no, they just threw in this Pizzagate nod, like right there in the middle of the episode for absolutely no reason.
And also South Park, they start talking about pizza pockets.
Yeah. No, like it's just
they're like, we have pizza pockets.
Right.
Is that recent?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Elon Musk.
Same exact week.
Yeah, Elon Musk was in the show, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's a pizza pocket."
Oh boy!
Right there in the middle of the Pizzagate thing.
Yeah, they're talking about going to Mars.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Oh well, what kind of food are we gonna eat or something like that?" And he said, "Oh, we've got pizza pockets."
Wow,
it was just
interesting.
It was just weird in and of itself.
Yeah,
weird timing.
Yeah, that sounds like really bad timing. Elon Musk, that guy just drives me crazy. So funny.
He's
but,
ridiculous.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I think he got caught up in the whole thing. He didn't realize until he got here from Africa.
I think they're playing him for a fool.
He had a dream. That's why he's now focusing only on Tesla, because that's something he has control over.
Since they blew up his rocket. Because he's talking about going to Mars, and we're going to go to Mars on this day. It's like people don't realize SpaceX has never put a person in space. Mm-hmm. They've never sent a person into orbit. Mm-hmm. They've never done that. And people get all excited about this rocket that they sent up and it came back. It's like, okay, that was on Earth. It didn't have any people in it. Yet 50 years ago, we sent a rocket to the moon, 248,000 miles away. It landed there. They got out, played golf, got back in, and it came back to the Earth. And people are cheering like crazy because this guy launched a rocket up into the sky and it came right back down.
It's ridiculous.
It's like, guys, this is not how technology goes.
It doesn't go backwards.
It wouldn't go backwards.
Didn't they find out that rocket was blown up by one of their competitors? That was like across the street or something like that. And apparently someone was up on their roof at the exact same time that the rocket launch was going off. And there was like a door wide open where it shouldn't have been. And so apparently somebody was on that roof.
Like in that movie Contact.
Ah, yeah, exactly like in the movie Contact.
I still want us to build one of those things. That just looks cool. We just got to try it. See if it does anything. We'll drop you through, babe, because I'm afraid of heights.
Make me be the guinea pig again.
Yeah, I read the same article.
Helmet on her and she's ready to go.
She's ready to go. She'll do it.
Just give me some cowtails and I'll be happy.
Those things are terrible.
They're the best.
And I read the same article you did, and I don't know if that ever got proven or anything, but I read the same thing that said that there was some, I think it was ULA.
Yeah, it was ULA. That's right.
And that they said there was even a lot of people have covered it, but there's like a little flash that happens that looks like something blew it up. And I got an insider at NASA, which is kind of cool.
That guy, that kid.
Yeah, he works there. He's a contractor there, and he texted me right after he said, "Get to the computer. Something just blew up. I don't know what it was, but I was in the he was in the vehicle assembly building, which is that 500-foot building they have, and he said that it felt like an earthquake, the end of the world." Mm-hmm. And so I ran to the computer, and I think
just like didn't see anything.
And it took a couple minutes
hours later.
Yeah,
there's the news.
So I knew about it ahead of time, so it's kind of cool to get those messages, because otherwise I might even doubt that it happened. Mm-hmm. That I could get into, just like you said, when you start doubting some things, you don't know where you're gonna go too far. Sometimes you can go too far on those things.
Yeah.
You have to.
I think in general events, there's things that happen, an event that happens, but what we're told obviously is usually and very rarely is the truth. So things happen, like there's an explosion, but they could say it's a million different things or whatever.
But I think things, maybe you see the same thing, Chris. They usually pan out to be easy to tell in the end. I mean, when you talk about Sandy Hook or these kind of things, for me, the recent flight that went down in South America, that I saw so many people calling that a hoax, and I said, yeah, I bet it is. Let me go look into it. And then within, an hour or two, I just told Missa, no, this is real. This really happened. And then the more you read, the more you research, it just confirmed.
Everything falls into place.
Yeah, everything fell into place like it really would.
There's no discrepancies, like weird edited pictures or whatever. It was an actual event. And so I guess over the course of the past 2 years, that's what I could say we've sort of gotten out of everything, is we're able to recognize what's real and what's not, what's true and what's not. And that's kind of what it comes down to. I mean,
somebody go try and look for the dash cams of the cop cars that showed up at Sandy Hook, and they are blocked. You can't get to them. Why would that be? Even with Freedom of the Information Act, you should be able to request that kind of data, but you won't see any of that. You can't request, school plan, nothing. They've closed that whole thing down. to people. And those are the kind of things that should raise red flags to people. I know a lot of people out there that still think that was an actual real event.
What?
Sandy Hook.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you jumped between.
Wait a minute. So you're telling me you're actually researching stuff?
Believe it or
my
not.
God.
That's unheard of in the truth movement in this day and age. You're just supposed to grab the headlines and then repost it.
There you go.
I'll explain more on the other side, but
Yeah.
I've been very frustrated with this because I've seen a lot of disinformation circulating, and it is so refreshing to hear that you guys are doing the same thing that we are and several others out there. You're actually researching this stuff and realizing there's some stuff that's actually hoaxes and some stuff that's actually real events. We'll be right back. Facebook is always a source of contention for one reason or another. But looking at some of the articles that are posted and reposted, I find that a lot of the stuff is actually not true. And when you lift the veil and actually read the documents behind whatever news story exists, the most recent was that Obama signed legislation that was anti-free speech and going after media. I think it was called the Anti-Propaganda Act. And it's a bill that's sitting in the Senate House, sitting on the Senate floor, and it hasn't moved at all. But people are circulating the idea that the language was stuck inside of the NDAA. And what Lucky and I were talking about yesterday was the idea that you get this in the people's consciousness that this kind of legislation is already passed. So when it does pass, or when it is introduced, people just kind of ignore it and go, "Oh yeah, no, they already passed that, so it's all done." But Jaron and Missa, it's really refreshing to hear that you guys are actually researching this and pushing stuff to the side that is not true. And when you do that, and by demonstrating doing that, I think that gives a lot more credibility to your flat Earth research, and people should listen that much more intently. Because you're not the type of person to just fall for disinformation, post stuff just for the sake of clicks, for clickbait, so on and so forth, which has become a very real epidemic in the alternative media. Your thoughts?
No, absolutely. You see it everywhere. I see it as much on Facebook too, and I'm always the guy that's popping in there saying, "This isn't true. Look into this story." I'm sure you've seen that video where the guy's standing in front of the Senate and said, and then we have these entities coming, and this is censored, and this part is censored, and people were spreading that like wildflowers, that basically saying that there was this something going on in the Senate. Well, you just had to look at it and realize that the whole video was completely faked. But
it was an Onion video.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But people were passing it off as being absolutely 100% legit, and yeah, I have the same problem. And right when I saw that plane go down and I started looking it up online, I went to Clues Forum, which I've always kind of put in kind of high stature after their 9/11 work. Then they started saying that I work for NASA and I'm part of some disinformation campaign or something. So then I kind of said, okay, I'm done with that site. But when I went there, they were right away within 2 or 3 hours of the flight going down, calling it a flat out hoax, just saying that everything about it was incorrect and showing weird pictures. And it saddens me to be part of a truth community that can't, give things a little time. I mean, if something like that happens and it is a hoax, give it 3-4 days. Mm-hmm. Do the research, look into it, really build yourself a case, and then come out. Because what you're doing now is as soon as an event happens, you want to be first to say it was fake. Mm-hmm. And I understand that there is false flags that go on, but it takes time to realize what happened. I mean, the San Bernardino case, for example, I was showing in the video that I did right when it came out, maybe within 2 days, I had a video showing that the car that the cops were chasing that supposedly had the back window shot out could not have been, it was physically impossible for that car to have been the one that was at the end scene, mm-hmm. where they, the guy's on the floor and the doors are open and the vehicle's filled with bullet holes. And that's all I was showing. But I saw so many other people calling the whole thing a hoax. And, as time went on, you find out that it does appear that 3 men in jackets, in bulletproof jackets, went up in there and killed a bunch of people.
Yeah, again, it's an event happened, but the story is always jumped on way too quickly by the media. So I think a lot of people in the truth movement are going at this in it by example. Like the news media does the same thing, and so they think that they have
right,
to
like they put something out right away about it. And it's like, I just wish that's the part that bothers me, is that it looks so bad because somebody going to the internet for information or going to YouTube to find out about it. If you're going and watching a video 20 minutes after something happens, you should expect not to get very much truth out of that.
Yeah.
That it's going to be somebody's opinion or conjecture, or just like this whole event with the Turkey ambassador that got shot.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that one yet, Chris?
I did. I'm not sure what to make of it, but I did see a few anomalies between the shooter while he was alive and on the ground.
Yeah, I definitely would say the same thing, but I haven't been able to come up with a complete, and I just don't want to be the guy that just goes out there and says, it's fake. It's fake. That's the way it goes. It's fake. I'd rather put together a nice package. Because when I started making videos, I had the idea that by doing the research and then basically recording my method or the way I came to my conclusions, that do a lot of things. It would be kind of a repeater for me, or like, a summary for myself. Also putting it so I can go back and find anything that I found later down the road. And then also showing people that would watch and kind of come with me on that journey that I was being honest, and that if somebody found a mistake in my research, like, hey, you actually said this, but I looked here and found this, that I would be able to go and correct things and kind of show people that I was really looking for truth, and that when a bunch of us got together and everybody's doing that same thing, that was my hope, that, okay, we can really get to the truth because we can learn. But all we got instead is really finger pointing, people, shill this, shill that. You work for the CIA. It's like, oh boy.
Whatever.
So I've kind of taken a little step back on some of those original ideas of just this great truth network where we'd all tell the truth. Because now it's kind of like, well, I guess I'm kind of on my own with research. I used to hope that there would be somebody out there that I could depend on, or, because if I believe that if you watch somebody and they earn your trust, then trust them.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that I trust my wife because she's proven herself to me time and time again. So it's not good just to doubt everything. Maybe you want to doubt things at first, and the mainstream media should be thrown out long ago to everyone.
I think doubt everything in the media at first, and then come to your conclusion, not based on what they say.
Right, and they've earned that.
Yeah.
It's like you can't just
You've earned me
trust
to
them
doubt
anymore.
you. Exactly.
I fell into the trap briefly of believing the opposite of everything the mainstream media was saying, because I was just so jaded by everything they were putting out that, they said this is real. Okay, it's fake.
It's a briar patch situation.
Maybe that's what it's all about, is that people have fallen. They've become so cynical of anything that happens out there that they completely dismiss anything and call everything a hoax, which is actually working against us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the extreme. You don't want to be on either end of the spectrum. You want to be in the middle, because being completely against the media and rejecting everything they say 100% is just as bad, like you said, as being on the other end and believing everything that the truth movement is saying. So you don't want, the whole thing, it comes down to don't trust people and what they say. Look into things yourself, analyze them, and then come to your conclusion. I think the problem is with people just trusting whichever side you're on. They're just trusting people, and then you get burned. So people just got to learn that.
Or you have to look at what is the end goal. If you're going to call something a hoax, what is the end goal? For Sandy Hook, you've got an end goal of gun control. Same thing with Orlando. With San Bernardino, you have gun control, and on top of that, you've got this hate for Muslims because these Muslims were here, and they that shows me a reason. But when you look at a plane crash in South America where a soccer team dies and everybody calling it a hoax, what is
there's no agenda behind it.
Right. Now with this, ambassador, there's an agenda behind it. You've got the conflict going on with Russia and Turkey. And so that could stem or could, help foster in a world war. So you can see where those things can be hoaxes. But sometimes the things that people call hoaxes, I just don't get. I know there's so many bad actors I'll call them bad actors. They're just kind of people that are lost. But in the fire in Oakland, there was a lot of bad acting in that. But I really do think that was a actual fire that burnt down a art place.
They were just a little weird.
They're just a little strange. But again, because if it's not, what is the reason? Why are we burning? Why does that matter? What really was the outcome?
Other than I could think them being like, these laws of, standards for living, homes and having hotels with laws and rules, there's a reason, because their hotel burnt down. So if they had gone along with the rules and regulations of the town, and you have to have this and with this and this and that and this, then it wouldn't have burned down. I could see that possibly being like something.
And that's actually an interesting point, because I think that's something we can take away from it if we're looking for a world where there is no government, that there is some things that the government probably did right, like
safety,
fire
safety
in
your
safety.
home.
I mean, the fact that being a store manager for a drugstore, I used to know all the laws as far as having 36 inches of clearance around every exit, having exits that are unlocked. You know, those things that we hate government, blah, 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 but they've probably saved a lot of lives.
Local government, I think, is a good thing when it comes to them looking out for your safety, you know.
Right.
But that's important.
But I mean, that's something just to think about, because if we ever did have a world with no government, there would still need to be a one-page sheet that said, hey, if you rent rooms to somebody, then you need to make sure that everything on the sheet is done, and tell people who are renting rooms, if these things aren't done, you shouldn't rent the room from the person.
Because there's lives are at stake.
Yeah, you're gonna die in there if they've got boxes in front of the exit doors.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a good with the bad, of course, you know.
Always. I always look for the silver lining.
Very well said. There is one source of truth that I will always follow no matter what. I'm going to play a little clip by this gentleman here.
I don't want to see him kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. I don't want to see him kissing goblins, succubus with goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. I don't want to see him kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. I don't want to see him kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, in bed with a goblin. Dump it. Charging into a goblin's nest, some goblin vomit and slop and blood on it, especially up to his ankles. Trump charging into a goblin's nest, some goblin vomit and slop. Goblin vomit and slop. I'm not expecting him to not get dirty slop. Kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins, succubus with goblins, in bed with a goblin. Kissing goblins, ingratiating goblins. I just want to catch him in bed with a goblin.
That very well said. I mean, you can't really argue with that.
Yep.
No, the black helicopters by the dozens, the barbed wire, the microphones in the trees.
During the day, sometimes ever since you told us or had us listen to that one song, I'll be walking around the house saying, Stalin took the It's just like stuck in my head.
She does sing that song all the time too.
I heard him do the DMT rant a long time ago, and I was like, you know what? This has to be a remix here. It has to be a remix. But I never sat down to put it together. And then I was making a joke on Facebook, just a little meme, and it said, Truth Frequency took the DMT. And I posted it, and somebody was like, Hitler took the DMT, Stalin took the... And I was like, hey, that's really
There you
good.
go.
And he's like, why don't you make a video of it? And boom, it just...
It grew legs.
It was born, yeah.
Yep.
Do you think you've seen it?
Or listened to
Yeah,
it?
he did. He actually watched it, and he did a live stream while he was watching it. And then and then did like a 30-minute commentary on it.
Oh, that's great.
I love that.
One of his people was talking about DMT, and he's like, look, you know, Chris Geo, he misquoted me. You know, the elite really do take DMT, and they're contact, but I'm not saying the DMT's bad in and of itself. And then one of his people came in, and he's like, man, you know, whenever I took it, you know, every time I take it, I come back with all the answers to all of the world's problems, and I'm just trying to bring it back into this dimension so I can solve all the world's problems. And right before I get back to this dimension, I just lose it every single time. And he jumps in. He's like, what do you mean every single time? I thought you only took it once. And he's like, no, just it was every single time in that one experience.
Yeah. Every time I think about that one time.
No, it was great.
It's like multiverse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice watching him watch it though, and his reaction to it. It was classic. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked him the other day.
He was a good
when
sport.
Oh, geez, sorry. When he went off on the Young Turks, I thought that was great because I can't stand those guys.
Them.
And sorry, my phone's going off here. Did you see that? And did you watch those guys on election night? How funny that was when they started off thinking there was no doubt that it was going to be Hillary, and as the night goes on, you just watch them start to lose their minds.
Like unbelievable. Oh boy.
No, but I've seen all the videos of liberal tears, I think it is, and they're showing all the different on election night, the Hillary supporters, and they're all like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah,
I saw Facebook, and a few people were posting, "I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh my God!" It's like, look, the world is going to go on just like it was before. It's the same BS. It doesn't matter who you get; just get over it.
Yeah.
How anybody want Hillary, though? It just baffles me. It's like...
It's because they wanted a woman president, but what they don't realize is that she wasn't even a good woman president candidate. She wasn't even a woman running. Yeah, it's so funny.
She looked like she was dead most of the time.
Oh, boy.
Well, my favorite one was the "Not my president, wah! Not my president, wah!"
That's so good.
I mean, it's funny because 8 years ago, the opposite was happening, and they got their president, and so they were all.
And now
happy
everybody's like, "Oh, Obama, no, I don't support him." And it's like, wait, a few years ago, you were all over YouTube. What happened to Obama girl? Where are you at?
Oh, she quit.
Yes, of course she quit.
She actually did a video about it and said, I'm ripping this up, and I'm sorry I ever did this because he hasn't done anything good. And he's invaded all these countries, and had I known he was going to do that, I would never have worn that.
Well, the same thing we're going to see with Trump, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. If he's controlled, then yes, absolutely. But if he's not, and I think he's a good businessman for the business government.
He's kind of showing his colors already.
Yeah, but business can also include Israel. It can also include war. It can also include things that are good for business, quote unquote. That's what got us into World War II.
Well, the one thing that I didn't like is that the first thing he did is he went over to Israel, met with Netanyahu, and he said that he was going to move the embassy over to Jerusalem and acknowledge Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which is currently being shared by Palestine, which means they're going to push the Palestinians out of Jerusalem, which creates a whole other situation in and of itself. And then they said he was going to up the funding for Israel and basically eliminate the Palestinian state.
That's like the Book of Revelation.
Right, which the people of Palestine, they've been living in an open air prison for decades. I mean, it's unheard of. Like, how the hell did we as a world allow this to happen to the people of Palestine? And then we're voting in a candidate. We voted in a candidate who's saying, "I want to build a wall." And it's like, dude, they have a wall in Palestine. It didn't work very well for them.
It's not working very well for them.
I just don't understand the whole. I mean, I do understand in one side of the story, but in the other side of the story, I don't understand the whole infatuation with Israel. It's the tiniest country, I think, in my eyes. It's so small, but I know it has to do with the Jews and the whole thing. But I mean, just leave them alone and we'll deal with our shit. But I don't think they want to do that.
Well, it's
not
the
even the
opposite.
Jews.
It's the Israel influence over the American government that's the problem.
Right.
They dictate all policy to the West and to the United States, and they have their fingers everywhere. Most of our politicians have dual citizenship with Israel.
Absolutely.
There's an Israel first policy, and Israel has nuclear weapons trained on literally everybody, and it's called the Samson option. And they're like, look, if anybody gets in our way, we're going to just blow up the entire world. So Israel being a 15-kilometer country, because I had that very same thought at first. I'm like, what the hell does a 15-kilometer country have anything to do with anything? But when you realize the extent of control that they have over the world, you realize this isn't just a 15-mile country. It's a global. I keep saying the word global, but it's a worldwide problem.
Well, and
I do understand that.
They still think they're the chosen ones.
I do understand that too, but
people.
I don't understand why they push that in the media, because the normal people don't understand that Israel runs everything. But we, on the other side, we understand that. We see everything, all the workings with the underhandedness and the funding of these terrorists or whatever. So we can understand that. But I don't know why it's always a big deal in every presidential candidacy or all the arguments or the debates. They're always talking about Israel. Like, why are you making that so obvious to people?
It's a mafia, and you have to pay homage to the Don.
Yeah.
And you have to give tribute to the Don, too. And the Don is in Israel.
Well, and I mean, look at the IDF. First of all, this is not a Jewish thing. This is not a Jew thing. It's not a Palestinian thing. It's a Zionist thing.
Yeah, I keep forgetting.
Two completely different things.
Yeah.
Number two, the IDF, their whole motto is, by way of deception, thou shalt do war. By way of deception, thou shalt do war. What does that tell you? Number three, They say in their
The
writings.
question though is, are they telling the truth when they say that?
Exactly. Well, I looked it up, and actually, that is their motto.
No, I know it's their motto, but I'm just making a joke.
Well, no, I needed to fact check that because there's so much disinformation about Zionism and about all of these things, and then what happens is people say something outlandish about it that they've read on one of these anti-Zionist websites. It turns out not to be true, and then the Zionists have more ammo to use against their detractors by saying, "Oh, well, they're always talking bad about us. They've tried to say for the last 500 years that we kill their children and eat them. You know, they say horrible things about us." And if you don't fact check, that's what happens. They also have wrote in their writings that it would be better to lose 1,000 Americans than to lose one Israeli. Mm-hmm. And that is their thing. And even the evangelicals here in the United States, which they basically run the Christian right wing the whole thing, their thing is the same exact thing. They would rather see 1,000 Americans dead than one Israeli.
Well, it's a perfect political strategy, in my opinion, because you have these nations that are supposedly Christian nations, and I wish we had another hour so we can get into this, but you have all these Christian people who will go along with any agenda you put in front of them because you tell them that that's for God's chosen people and you should never go against Israel.
Right.
Or you're the Antichrist.
Right.
And let all these things happen because Jesus will come save you.
Exactly.
Pretty soon anyway.
And if you, I mean, I even had my grandparents involved in a big discussion about this because they're pastors, and my grandmother's sister, my great aunt, she said, "Well, you know what they say, if America stops supporting Israel, then God will stop supporting America."
Yeah, they believe that.
They literally believe that.
Yep. Yeah, it's sad too because it's
another deception that's as widely.
Yep. And they play right into the prophecies, which, you know, people say, "Oh, the prophecies are coming true." It's like, yeah, but the book has been read, so people only need to make what happens later in the book come true for you to believe that that's a prophecy coming true.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of
obvious,
sad, and I go back to Christians and I just try and say all the time that, you know, wouldn't it be in the Bible everywhere that Jesus kept saying, "Your ticket to salvation is worshiping me"? That's what but he never says that.
No.
So how can they go around just claiming that that's the secret to life, that's all you got to do for your salvation is to trust in Jesus Christ? It's like, but he never says that. So it's like, I wish they'd read their own Bible, which, again, we go back to that all the time. That's
Catholic, a lot of work, though, Jaron. I mean, come on. You can't expect people to read the Bible.
I got to feed my children. I got to put a roof over my head.
Yeah, you got to put a roof over your head.
Which is a good thing. You need to do that.
Well, even Jesus spoke about the fake Jews. You know, the Jews that aren't really the synagogue of Satan. You know, the Jews that aren't really Jews. I mean, that kind of says it right there. If you read all of the Bible, then you walk away with a completely different mindset than somebody who was raised with the Bible.
Well, here you have an ideology that is all about victimization based on race. Oh, it's anti-Semitism, it's this and that, while at the same time claiming to be God's chosen people.
Right.
It doesn't get any more racist than that. Like, oh, we're God's chosen people. Like, according to who?
Give us your money and your land. We belong to God.
Anyways,
God said that we could do it.
A minute and a half left, guys. This has been awesome.
Wow.
This show just kind of flew by.
It did.
So, anything you want to leave the audience with?
No, I should clear up real quick when you said I was talking about Aleister Crowley. I just wanted to mention that you're, like you said, people need to be open to research anything. And for us, it was exciting to kind of read some of his stuff because I don't want to summon any demons, so I might as well read some works by somebody who thinks he did. Mm-hmm. Let him do it for me. I don't want to do it myself. So, but that video was just telling, he wrote some great stuff. Again, like you said, I certainly don't agree with everything he said or even most of it. It's very little.
It's the whole, there's always an underlying lesson to be learned in everything that you put up. And in this case, again, it's saying don't just believe everything you hear about somebody. Go and actually read what they've written. You could focus on my life when I was 13 through 16, but it would be very promiscuous. And if everyone just, I guess, knew me by that, then they would think I was a very
bad girl,
simple person. Well, they still do, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that that's the case. Is that for us, even I had always heard about Aleister Crowley. I've read some topical stuff, but I certainly never purposefully sat down and read a book that he wrote because I had been filled in my head with, Satanist that was trying to bring on the child of Babylon. And so I just dismissed him altogether because of what I was taught. And if there's one thing I've learned in this last 2 years, it's to definitely do my own research. And when we read 2 of his books, they were really good.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that far too many times, and so I try to read everything. Helena Blavatsky, huge inspiration, but a lot of people have demonized her work for one reason or just because she has a spooky-looking picture. That's it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We have much more coming up. Brent Thomas's Paranormal Portal is up next. Thank you for tuning in. Keep your thumb to the sky. Don't forget to bring your towel and kiss the one you love because you never know when the last time is going to be.
Love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Meditate on your experience. And remember, reality is merely an illusion. Thus, we wish you pleasant dreams. www.beyondtheveilradio.com